I did go out onto the scaffolding outside the house. I plucked up the courage. I made it. I went out. I looked at my roof. I took the nail and gear flag and I fluttered it in the wind above the house. So, inspired by Gray's Batman efforts. Basically, I just didn't want him to be the only Batman.
Right.
So I did it. I did it.
It's another very cool picture of you, Brady. I feel like that one, too, is calling out for some photoshopping, just like your looking cool explosion photograph. You know, you got the wind blowing the mighty nail and gear flag. Like it's, it's calling out for a little modification, I think.
Gray, I'm open to that. I'm even willing to make some suggestions. There's a fantastic picture.
Don't tell the internet what to do, Brady. You'll regret it.
Can I suggest perhaps Tenzing atop Mount Everest could be used as inspiration? Hillary and Tenzing together on the summits going up the southeast face there. But you're right. I think the picture's magnificent enough on its own that it doesn't need photoshopping. But
yes, it looks absolutely magnificent. You on the scaffolding leading up to your house.
for those who have asked, I went for the shimmy out the window option rather than the going up the ladders option. I just didn't trust those ladders.
Yeah, this is a popular request. Lots of people dying to know which way it was.
Do you know what? Yes. A lot of people have asked, did you do the ladder or did you go out the window? So for those who are asking, I went for the window.
I'm very proud of you.
We've got to tie up the loose ends.
Oh yeah? Is that what we do on the show? We tie up the loose ends?
Yeah, I like to think it's like a whole complete thing. I would like to think when the last ever episode of Hello Internet is recorded, it will somehow close some loop that started like with the first episode, and people will go, do you know what? I think they planned the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing was scripted. It was like a genius Agatha Christie sort of thing where every single sentence in every single episode was somehow working towards some moment at the end.
I went to my regular gym this morning and I'm walking up to the front desk. I'm getting ready to go in and there's a big pile of towels that you're supposed to take from as you go into the gym. But the new thing this morning was a gigantic sign. And by gigantic, I mean as tall as me. They erected a huge sign which said, please think about the environment and only take one towel into the gym. And this kind of thing infuriates me. It absolutely infuriates me. And at my gym, it infuriates me multiple times over. So I took 4 towels into the gym today. I did not take 1 towel into the gym.
And 2 whale skins.
And I clubbed a seal on the way, right? I feel like I don't even need to explain why this is infuriating. Let me just run through why in a gym I find this particularly frustrating. There's another sign later in the gym, which is in the actual equipment. Like when you're doing your workout, they have these little signs up all over the place which say, please be considerate to the other patrons and make sure to wipe down the equipment after you've used it. Totally reasonable, right? This is a totally reasonable civilization-like request. You've been a sweaty, gross person on a piece of equipment. You're going to wipe down your gross sweat off of it, right? Reasonable? Yes, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Except that the question is, wipe it down with what? Because in the gym, there are no little hand wipes for you to use. There's no equipment there at all. So unless you're going to wipe it down with your hand, the only conceivable thing that you could use to wipe down the equipment is the one towel that they want you to bring into the gym. But nobody's going to use the same towel to clean the gym equipment as to clean themselves later in the shower. I think that is just vastly unreasonable.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's completely unreasonable. I'm glad you're on board with me, Brady. I really appreciate that.
I'm not sure that's what they mean by the one towel thing, though. Surely you can then get a different towel when you go for your shower afterwards.
Here's the thing with the setup of this, with the fascist like setup that this gym has arranged, right? the setup is such that you can only pick up the towels before you go in with this little membership card that they give you. So the towels are not accessible when you are inside the gym.
Right.
So they have this big sign saying, please take only one towel, and then you have to pass through a barrier through which you cannot return to get another towel later. Like, they clearly just want you to take one. So this is why I don't just take one. I'm going to take, well, we'll just start out with, I'm going to take two, right? Because I'm going to need one to clean down the equipment and a separate one to clean down myself in the shower. Now, I also happen to take a third towel because I think it's quite reasonable to do the same thing in a sauna, right? Like, you're laying down in a sauna as a gigantic sweaty piece of meat. You are sweating everywhere. It's nicer for everybody. Again, this is how civilization holds together. If you put down a towel in the sauna, and you sweat out your gross bodily fluids onto the towel instead of onto the wood. So this is why I would normally take 3 towels into the gym. One for the sauna, one for cleaning the equipment, and one for cleaning me. I think this is totally reasonable.
No, I think 3 is too many, Gray. I think you could get away with 2.
I could get away with 2. I'm not arguing that I could get away with 2 if I was willing to introduce an unacceptable level of grossness into my life of like, oh, I've used this towel to clean down all of the equipment and I'm also going to use it to clean down the sauna. Like, no, that's not going to happen, because the cleaning down in the gym towel, that one never really touches my skin, right? Because I'm wearing gym clothes when I'm in the gym. Whereas in the sauna, that towel is also touching my skin. So I don't want to use the same towel. I think that's quite reasonable.
I've never been to a gym where they haven't got like rolls of blue roll everywhere, that blue paper that you could just use to wipe down the equipment or your forehead and things like that. Do they not have paper towel?
I know. This one does not, right? In the main area, they have drinking fountains and that's it. And I see people using their one sad towel to clean the equipment or to do that thing where like you reserve a piece of equipment by draping the towel across it. They're using that same towel that they then take back into the showers. And like, they're all being, oh, I'll follow the sign, right? But I'm not going to follow the sign. So normally I would take 3 towels. But today, because this new sign was there about like, think of the environment as well, I took 4 towels because one of them was just out of pure vengeance and passive aggressiveness. I thought, if you're going to tell me how many towels I'm supposed to take because of Mother Earth. Like, no, I'm going to take more towels because I don't think that sign is there because this gym company suddenly really cares about Mother Earth. No, I think they're just trying to come up with a better way to make people use fewer towels. And their normal sign that just said, oh, please take 1 towel, they didn't think was effective enough. So they've decided to introduce this kind of environmental nagginess into the system to try to be more effective about reducing towel usage. And I feel like, screw you. If you're going to do that, if you're going to be passive aggressive towards me in that way, I'm going to be passive aggressive towards you. I'm taking an extra towel today. It's so clear to me that the company's primary concern is the amount of money that they are spending on towel laundering, right? And it has nothing to do with the actual environment itself. Like, that's clearly what's going on. And that's the thing that really bothers me about these kind of situations that you see. Like, like you go out to California and you're in a hotel or somewhere and they have a little sign. They're like, oh, there's a drought in California. Please don't take a very long shower. Please don't wash your hands super thoroughly. And it's like, no, I'm not going to listen to you, little sign. Like, I don't think the environment is really your primary concern here. Like, I think your primary concern is the water bill at your hotel. I only ever see these kind of environmental signs in places where people are using a company's resource that is extraordinarily difficult for the company to police its usage. Like, and then suddenly they're very concerned about the environment and wanting you to use as little of the resource as possible, right? No, please only take 1 napkin. Think about dear precious Mother Earth. Like, no, I don't think that's the reason here. And I'm going to take extra napkins just because you told me not to.
But it is like a sort of a tangential benefit that the Earth does come out on top if we do use less water and wash less towels. So it's almost like you're cutting off the Earth's nose to spite the company's face.
I mean, you say that, right? But how much water can possibly be used by the global consumption of cleaning towels? I don't think very much. I
don't know, quite a lot. I bet you it's a lot. Sometimes you see statistics on those little nagging signs where they say they give you all these liters of water and things like that.
See, right there, what you're doing, you're falling for their trap, right? Because look at the way they always express those things. They will always give you statistics in just huge numbers, right? They play the huge number game. Like, did you know that people washing their hands in California, they use a bajillion liters of water every minute? And like, oh my God, a bajillion liters of water. That sounds like so much. The only relevant question in any of these scenarios, like if you're thinking about, I really care about Mother Earth and I really care about not using her resources. The thing is not the absolute amount of resources in any particular situation. The question is, what percent of the pie chart of total resource use is this? Water use, for example, personal water use, like people using water for drinking and for showering and for laundering towels, presumably, this is like 0% of the water use. And the huge amount of water use is usually goes to things like agriculture or some industrial processes, right? Like if you care about the environment, that is the thing to focus on, is like changing how the vast majority of water is being used. It's crazy making to focus on like the little thing that you can see. Like I think that's naturally where people's brains go with this kind of stuff. They focus on like, oh, there's this little thing that I can see in front of me and I'm going to spend some time on changing it. But it's like it has no impact whatsoever on the global scheme.
Journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, Gray.
But if you're just walking 1,000 random steps in random directions, you're making no progress on anything. No progress whatsoever. That's all I'm saying.
All right. This seems like a good time to promote one of my topics up the running order then, because it sort of ties in.
Go ahead.
It's a bit of follow-up. It involves the invention of a new term, which is a favourite pastime of mine.
Oh, we have another Brady term, do we?
We do. I want to talk about something that I'm going to call cheer pressure.
Cheer pressure.
Yeah. So if I take you back to last episode, I was talking a bit about this cricket match and how this guy had mucked up at the end of a cricket match and then a lot of people had criticised him online. Mm-hmm. And then all these other people kind of rushed to his defence and said, you shouldn't pick on him. He tried hard. He put his hand up at the end of the game and, you know, had the courage to try. And if he fails, you shouldn't pick on him. And I didn't completely agree with that. But then it had echoes later in the same show when I made a few glib comments about the SpaceX program, Elon Musk's private rocket company that has been attempting to land rockets on platforms in the sea to sort of make them reusable so they sort of self-land, which is quite an impressive thing to do, to make a rocket re-land after use standing upright. And there'd been a few spectacular crashes and they blew up. And just my luck, straight after we recorded, there was a very successful landing. So it made me, but anyway, that's beside.
It was like the day after we recorded, he had a huge success. Yeah. And then I waited 8 weeks to actually release the episode, making you look like a total idiot.
Yeah. Anyway, that's beside the point. That there were a series of quite spectacular crashes, and I made some jokes about it. And I don't want to say that lots of people got in touch and lots of people complained, because it's very easy to think when you see 5 or 6 comments on Reddit that that's lots of people, when of course it's not, whenever how many hundreds of thousands of people listen or whatever. But it does seem like loud in your head when you're reading the comments.
And it's easy to have them stick in your craw, right? Where you feel like you need to address those things.
Yeah. And the main sentiment of them, I haven't got any of them in front of me at the moment, but I think the main sentiment of them were, I should know better. As an enthusiast about space and the Apollo program, I shouldn't be speaking down about SpaceX, basically. I should be supporting them. And there was also comments, which are true, along the lines of that space exploration is really hard and lots of things go wrong. I'm
sure you were unaware of that. Are you aware space exploration is difficult, Brady?
But this new thing that's happening, it echoes something else I've complained about on the show before, and that is these kind of, and I relate it to science more than anything because I guess I'm a sciencey person and I follow lots of sciencey people on Twitter, and that is this science cheerleading and this over enthusiasm and over positivity about anything sciencey related, and now it's going the other way into what I call this cheer pressure of this kind of turning and belittling people if they dare criticize or speak against science or exploration or whatever the chosen topic is. Like, how dare you speak badly about SpaceX, you're supposed to be one of us, Brady. You're supposed to be a space person. You're supposed to be a science person. You're not allowed to criticize SpaceX. You're not allowed to make jokes about his rockets falling over like drunk people as they try to land on the platform. Like, and my attitude is, yes, I am. Stop cheer pressuring me. I'll make jokes about it. It doesn't mean I don't think it's awesome. It doesn't mean I don't like space exploration. But, like, you're allowed to criticize things. You're allowed to make jokes. And, like, chill out, everyone. And, like, this sort of now rabid turning on people if they dare. It's like, you know, it's like cult-like. Who's Elon Musk, man? He's a science guy himself. He's not L. Ron Hubbard. Like, we're allowed to make jokes at his expense and pick on him, you know? Everyone picks on Elon Musk. It's like a fun sport, isn't it?
I would never say anything bad about Elon Musk, Brady.
No, well, you wouldn't say anything bad about him, but you also wouldn't turn on someone who did.
Yeah, of course not. Of course not.
Am I imagining this? Is cheer pressure a thing?
I'm already trying to formulate in my mind like a definition for what you mean by this. But I think you're onto something here, Brady. I'm immediately latching on to cheer pressure sounds right. Yeah, that it's like a reverse bullying from people who are into a thing. I don't know. I'm having a hard time articulating what it is, but just like hot stoppers, something about this feels innately right.
I mean, it's basically pressuring people with similar interests to all be positive about the same thing. We must all cheer it together. We must all be cheerleaders for SpaceX, because if one of us doesn't toe the line, I can be interested in space exploration and still make jokes and criticize and things. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's quite a scientific thing to do, isn't it? It's also just funny.
I think that's a good working definition, and I like that. And I think that there is something along those lines. What you're feeling here is one of the various and multitude side effects of humans and their group thinking. I think there is just something innately in humans that is desirous of being part of a group. Like when someone listens to the podcast, right, and they hear you talk about the space program and you love all of this stuff, and if they're a person who's super into space, they are now mentally categorizing you as like, oh, this person is in the exact same group as me. And so then when there's any kind of divergence from that, the person, this kind of cheer pressure is coming out, right? Where the person wants to bring you back into line with like, you are part of my group. Like, I listen to the podcast. I like you. I like space. Hearing you say something I don't like about space is suddenly causing a problem in my brain because I can't neatly put you into the group of people who are super into space all the time, 100% just like I am. I think that's what's occurring. It's because the people like you, Brady. They want you in the group. That's what's occurring here. That's why I think like relating this to peer pressure is the right metaphor to make, where peer pressure is about group conformity and this cheer pressure is a similar thing, but it's like the next level up of not just conformity but visible and obvious enthusiasm for all of the things that the group has decided are good to be visibly and obviously enthusiastic about. I can get behind this one.
And I'm well aware, and you know, when they were testing for the early space program before Mercury, their rockets were blowing up all the time. There's a really famous montage in the film The Right Stuff that just shows all these rockets blowing up one after the other. It's a classic moment in the film, and like we're just going through that again. And I'm sure they were getting flack at the time too when the press were there filming and their rockets were blowing up. And you just got to get through that. It's just part of the drama of it all. And we don't all have to just. If everyone just cheers 100% and pats him on the back every time one of his rockets blows up and says, "Don't worry, you'll get it next time," and no one says, "Gosh, do these people know what they're doing?" Nothing ever gets achieved. There's no pressure and criticism, and that really pushes people, that scrutiny and that fear of failure. If people aren't worried about things going wrong, I don't think they work as hard. It keeps them on their toes. In
a free society, we should broaden this out to the widest possible net. Like in a free society, you should be able to criticize whatever you want. That doesn't exist. And even if through like tremendous peer or cheer pressure, like you feel like you're not allowed to say things. Like, I don't think that's good for a free society. Like, even if you're into space, you should totally be able to criticize SpaceX if you want to, or just make jokes at their expense. Like, yeah, they're doing a great thing, but you can laugh at it. Like, it's totally fine. You know, they're just words floating in the air. They're just like thoughts in people's heads. You're not going out there and like sabotaging the rockets when you criticize them for falling over in the first few attempts. This episode of Hello Internet is brought to you by Freshbooks. Freshbooks is the ridiculously easy-to-use online accounting software designed to help creative entrepreneurs get organized, save time, and get paid faster. Freshbooks is a super simple way to create and send an invoice online. It literally takes like 30 seconds to do. There's no formulas or formatting, just perfectly crafted invoices every time. Your clients can pay you online, which often means you end up getting paid a lot faster. And I have to say, having been on the receiving end of FreshBook invoices, I totally have paid them way faster because they just have it right there. There's a couple buttons you can press. You have a few options to pick. They do make it super simple to pay. So I am definitely one of those clients who, if I receive an invoice that is from FreshBooks, I will pay it faster just because it's easier to do. Now, if you do have a client that doesn't pay you on time, FreshBooks will handle the awkwardness with customizable late payment reminders. Not only do they do amazing invoices, but FreshBooks can also automatically import expenses from your bank account. It can handle your time tracking so that when it comes to create that invoice, you'll know precisely what you did and when. And it helps you with cash flow tracking. All of the little details about what's come in and what's gone out are kept in one place. So FreshBook knows exactly what invoices you sent, who's paid them, and who owes you what. Now, FreshBooks is a new sponsor to Hello Internet, and they are giving you, dear listener, the offer that if you go to freshbooks.com/hello and enter Hello Internet in the How Did You Hear About section when you sign up, you will get a free month of FreshBooks. So if you're a self-employed person, if you are running a company and you're looking for a better way to handle your invoices, make things simpler, get paid faster, show FreshBooks a little bit of the Hello Internet love by going to freshbooks.com/hello and telling them that Hello Internet is how you heard about them. Thanks to FreshBooks for supporting the show. I love this is a recurring theme of you, Brady. You put things in the show notes, and then when it comes around to the episode, you think, I put this thing in here. Why did I put this thing in here? I remember it made me really angry at the time, but now I can't remember why.
Yeah, I know. I think the thing is that it echoed a few of the things I thought, I guess, that it just wasn't massively useful. Can you recap it for me?
Can I tell you why you put this article in there?
Yeah.
I think this was just one of a series of articles because the Apple Watch has been around for a year. People are doing retrospectives on it.
Okay. Yeah.
That's why there's been Apple Watch talk in the air. It's been a long enough time. Interestingly, Apple hasn't released another one, which makes people sort of question things because it's quite a long time for them to have a Generation 1 product. This is one of the many articles kind of speculating about how many watches they could possibly have sold and coming up with numbers that don't necessarily look great. As always with this kind of stuff, it's shockingly hard to speculate about some of Apple's stuff because they play their cards close to the chest as much as they can. And the Apple Watch is one of these things that they group into like an other sales category. And like, who knows what's in that other sales category?
Yeah.
But either way, the other sales category didn't shoot up a tremendous amount. So you can safely assume like they didn't sell a bazillion watches. Like that's part of what this is. But I see this sentiment a bunch of times, and this always drives me crazy with not just the Apple Watch, but with any technology products out there in the world, that people always phrase it in terms of need, where they say like, do you need X? And whenever anyone is asking that question, the answer is almost always no. No, you don't need anything. Even I would argue like a smartphone. Do you need a smartphone? No, like it doesn't really fall under the category of need. It's a thing that's incredibly useful. I just always think that framing is so wrong.
Yeah, but I think you're thinking of need in the wrong way. I think you used the word yourself there. Useful. Is there a usefulness? Mm-hmm. I think that's what they mean by need. They don't mean like food or oxygen or water. Mm-hmm. I think they mean it as in, can you get use out of it? And even that, I know, you don't get use out of a diamond necklace, I guess. But that's not really how the Apple Watch sells itself, as just purely a piece of ornament. It does sell itself as a useful item. So I think it's a fair question to ask about it. It's just a different type of need, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the title I would want would be Ungainly Long. Do people find economic utility in the Apple Watch? Like, that's the title that I would want. And I guess I can see why they might want to use the word need. But I always feel like that is just too strong. If they want a 4-letter word, I think they could say want. Like, do people want an Apple Watch? Like, I think that conveys a much better idea. And like you said there, it's like jewelry. Nobody in the world needs jewelry. But do people want jewelry in its various forms? Yes. Like, that is clearly a demand that people have, even though there's just no utility to it whatsoever. But it doesn't matter because monkeys like shiny things, right? And so, like, they want to buy them.
Want is slightly the wrong word too for me, though, Gray, because if you gave me one for Christmas, I'd say thank you, and I'd maybe wear it occasionally and look at it and say, like, I want one. I want one. I want to look at it and play with it. But nowhere near enough to pay for one. So I don't think want is the right word either, but I don't know what the right word is. Yeah.
We need a word between need and want.
Yeah.
You're the word man, Brady.
Yeah. I haven't got that. It can't be weed.
That was precisely like, do people weed an Apple Watch? I don't see any problem with using a word like that. Within context, I'm sure it'd be very clear. Do people weed an Apple Watch? I don't think so.
I don't know. It's almost like, does the Apple Watch have a role in the world, is what it's coming down to.
Is there a role for it in people's life? That is the question. And as we discussed last time, like I am surprised by the lack of Apple Watches that I see in the real world. It provides a great deal of utility for me, and I totally love it. But I would just, I would die to know, like, what does Apple internally think about their own Apple Watch? I just don't know. But speaking of things that I weed, because of you, Brady, I actually went out and bought an iPhone SE.
Oh.
And I am entirely blaming this on you because we have these conversations sometimes, and like, you plant a little thought in my head, this little irritating grain of sand in my mind that I don't want there, but that you come along and you just drop into my brain. And you planted one of these irritating grains of sand in my mind about the iPhone SE when we discussed it last time.
I know. I heard the moment it happened. I could hear, as I was listening back to the podcast, I could hear you, like, something flip in your voice. You're like,
yeah,
maybe I should too.
Yeah. Perfect. It sounds just like me. So there are these two conflicting aspects of my personality regarding the iPhone SE. The primary one, which I was thinking, is I know that I'm a person who likes to have up-to-date technology. That's just part of my personality. That's the way that I am. I know and accept that. All right. And so I thought, well, getting on the iPhone SE track, this is no good because Apple's probably not going to update this for forever. But you planted this idea of, like, just try it. Maybe it's like a fun romantic fling with this other device. And like, that just lodged into my brain in this way that I could not possibly remove. And so I found myself going to the Apple store and like picking up an iPhone SE and looking at it and like turning it over in my hand and turning it over in my mind. And like, I couldn't let it go. And so I eventually caved. And I did decide to get one. And so I have been using the iPhone SE for the past couple of days.
Wow. And?
Man, I forgot how perfect of a physical size this phone is.
Wow.
It is like sweet relief after this long nightmare of the iPhone 6 and 6S generation. Do you know how pleasurable it is to hold a phone and to not be thinking, I hope this doesn't slide out of my hand. I can hardly grip that round edge. Like, oh, it's slippery. Don't drop it, right? God, like the thought that is in your head every single time you pick up one of the iPhone S models. Or like when I first got the original S, like, oh, this phone, it's a little too big and a little too small at the same time. Like, it's just these frustrating things. Like, to pick up a phone and to have it, 1, fit entirely within my hand, 2, have a single thumb be able to reach every single point on the screen, and 3, hold it securely with straight edges on the phone. It is just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I am so happy to be using this size phone.
Wow. What about things like the smaller screen for, watching video, and had you gotten used to the bigger screen? And what about memory and battery life and the other potential drawbacks?
Yeah, there are potentially a bunch of drawbacks. And when you do start using it at first, like some of the icons do seem ridiculously small, and all of the icons bunched together on the screen seem like, boy, there's not a lot of space between these icons. Like everything feels really crowded, but you get used to it so fast. I was watching a YouTube video on it earlier that, like you were discussing for your own work, like someone sent me a thing to review, and so I was taking a look at it on the smaller phone on the go, and it didn't even occur to me like, oh man, I just wish this screen was bigger. Like it was totally fine for purpose, like to be able to do some basic work on it. Like it was absolutely fine. So the smaller screen is not an issue.
This is really interesting. I'm convinced my bigger phone's giving me RSI.
Oh yeah? Why do you say that? I
just feel like the back of my right hand hurts a lot from when I use it a lot, from all that reaching and shimmying, and so I think I'm going to go small too.
Yeah, and gripping it tightly in your hand to make sure that it doesn't fall, right? Like, oh, I gotta put a death grip on this, like I'm choking a chicken to death, right? Like you gotta hold on to that phone. You
know what the message here is, Gray?
What's the message?
Brady was right.
Oh yeah, is that what it is?
Yeah.
I do have to say, like you planting that seed in my head, as irritating as I found it for, I mean, I don't know, like 2 weeks that just kept rolling around in my brain and I couldn't let it go. And I was genuinely annoyed with you in this way that I was like this is not rational, but nonetheless, like I can't let go of this thought. I am just so happy. I'm so happy now. And I love this phone design. Probably the biggest challenge going back to it, I've been using it for a few days. I still have to do sometimes is that, again, I use my iPhone in my left hand and I have to kind of remember how to type with a single hand. And I often catch my right hand reaching up to help and to type on the phone. And I have to go like, no, right hand, no, you're not actually helpful here. Like left hand can handle this thing all by itself. Like it can do all of the typing. And so I'm trying to train my right hand to not come up. But I want to try to type with 2 thumbs, even though that's totally impossible. But I'm getting used to it very quickly. That's probably been the biggest adjustment. But
I led you out of the wilderness.
But you are still in the wilderness, Brady.
I know, and I'm coming, Gray. I'm.
Yeah, are you going to change?
Yeah, I might go and have a look in the store this weekend or something.
Looking at it in the store, I was thinking, oh boy, like this size is really nice and it's interesting to use, and I love this design. Like it obviously looks better than the garbage 6 design. I was thinking all of those things, but actually using it for a few days is like seeing it in the store times 10. I keep feeling this word of like relief. Like I am relieved to have this phone now. It's just so much nicer and so much more pleasant to use in every possible way. I like that it's smaller. I find it like in the gym, taking it in and out of my pocket to record like exercises is better. Across every single axis, I find this phone superior. So,
great. I'm going to have a mechanical watch on your wrist by Christmas.
You will not. You will not, my friend. You will not.
Chihuahua by next June. I'm becoming concerned with the amount of humility that golfers are showing. And it's being led by this guy who's one of the big hot golfers at the moment, this guy called Jordan Spieth. And I know that he's not the only one who does this, but he's the one that I've really strongly noticed doing this. Mm-hmm. And that is referring to himself as we. And partly that's because he has got a team of people and he has got his caddy. So when he's on the course, there is a real teamwork between the golfer and the caddy. I do get that. And I do get that being a professional golfer these days isn't just like one person. There is like a team around you. But this sort of humbleness at the end of the round when you do something good and saying, yeah, we had a great day and we were really happy with how we played, when really there is only one person striking the ball and doing these things, sometimes seems a bit disingenuous.
I'm not familiar with this person. Would he really say a sentence like that? We had
we had a really great day today. And don't get me wrong, he has got a caddy standing next to him who is doing more than just carrying his clubs. I do understand the role of a caddy in modern golf, but still, it reached a zenith at the recent Masters tournament when it was won by a guy called Danny Willett, who's an English guy, and he was being interviewed afterwards. He was obviously trying to do the we thing, which obviously has become the thing to do now. And he was talking about how we're really happy, we. And he was sort of slipping between we and I in this uncomfortable way. And it reached farcical proportions when he was talking about his parents and how much his parents did for him when he was growing up. And he said of his parents, he said, I hope they're really proud of the person we've become.
I don't think even the Queen would use we in that way.
No, but it does. But it did remind me that this is something that I think we, as in people like us, Gray, can be guilty of, and I can be guilty of. And that is, I quite often use we when referring to things I'm doing. Like if I'm talking about something at Numberphile or something at Periodic Videos, I will often use we. And should I be using I? And partly using we because I do work with all these other people and there's all these people I film and it's this huge team effort. But if I'm sitting here at my desk saying, we love all these tweets you're sending in, and I'm the only one reading them who knows about them, it is a little bit disingenuous of me to be using we. People like me who is sort of individuals but work with other people, I sometimes get myself into a tangle about when I should use we and I. I wonder what you think about that.
Funny, it didn't really occur to me. I mean, there are scenarios under which maybe theoretically this would be a problem for me, like with the Star Trek video that I made where Canute did all the artwork. But it wouldn't occur to me on Twitter to say something like, we are really happy with the way the video is being received. Like that would seem like I'm having some kind of psychotic break to write a tweet in that way, even where it's a case like, obviously I didn't draw that artwork. I'm obviously not that talented, but it would seem so strange to use a we in a scenario like that.
Yeah, but I don't feel strange when I do a tweet like, say I'm tweeting under the Periodic Videos banner, which is, I work with all these professors and chemists and stuff. And if I say we're really excited about the video we're putting out tomorrow, when I'm just sitting at my desk on my own, I haven't spoken to the others for a week or two.
Right.
They don't know the video's even coming out tomorrow.
Right. It's just you and the dogs there.
Yeah. So, and yeah, I feel completely comfortable saying that. I do feel completely comfortable referring to my projects with a we.
Okay, I think there's a couple things that are different here, though, right? Because one, you're tweeting from the Periodic Videos tweet, right? And you have a separate Brady Heron Twitter that is you as an individual. So this is Periodic Videos, the corporate entity talking about what everyone has done. In the same way, like we don't really use, and this is now we, all of a sudden it's all tangled in my brain. You and I, Brady, you and I do not tweet from the Hello Internet Twitter account very often. I don't think I would go onto the Hello Internet Twitter account and make any kind of statement in the first person I don't think I would do that, right? I think if you and I use the Twitter account to announce that you and I are going to be recording an episode, I think I would use the word we if I was tweeting from the Hello Internet account. We are going to be recording tonight. Is there anything we should talk about? That seems very natural because it's you and me, right?
Yep.
I think, though, where you run into more trouble, to hopefully poison your mind a tiny bit, is whenever you're talking about any of your videos, because you are not on camera very often in most of your projects. Objectivity is a notable exception. But for like on Numberphile, you're behind the camera most of the time. Sometimes the audience will hear you ask a question, right? And like you're there, but the person you're filming is the visual on-screen presence.
Yeah.
And you are the editing presence. And so it seems like it's almost impossible for you to talk about any of your Numberphile-like videos in anything other than a we.
Yeah.
Because it's so intrinsically a multi-person project. Even though you are doing the filming and you are doing the editing, you aren't really doing any of the explaining. Like someone else is on camera doing the talking. Like you're guiding that and editing that. It's obviously the two of you. So from now on, You should never use the first person singular when referring to any of your videos like that. You should always use we. That's what you should do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if you're tweeting from Brady Harron, we are quite pleased with the reception of the latest number file video. That's what you should do from now on.
The main reason I started at Brady Harron Twitter was I was getting myself into such a pickle with disentangling myself from being me and being in projects. But all right.
Let me ask your opinion on another use of the we, though.
Yeah.
What do you think when, say, a couple you know comes up to you and says, say, like at a dinner party or something, they go, "Oh, we have an exciting announcement. We're pregnant." What do you think about that use of the we?
I am not a fan of it. I don't want to offend anyone, but I think only one person can be pregnant in that scenario. I appreciate the solidarity of it, and if you choose to do it, I respect it. And if someone came up to me and said, "We are pregnant," I wouldn't laugh at them and say, "You're an idiot, only she is." But it's not the path I would choose.
Yeah, you wouldn't go that way?
No, I think it seems strange.
Yeah.
But I get it, in the modern world. And
look at you being all diplomatic.
Well, you've got, you have to be. Sometimes you have to be.
I don't think you have to be.
I think it's better to say that the individual who's pregnant is pregnant. I guess if you come up and say we are pregnant, it takes away my ability to make the who's the father joke.
Yeah, you think? Is that your go-to, Brady, when people announce their pregnancy?
Yeah,
who's the father?
Oh no, it depends on the tone of the announcement. I think you could say we're having a baby, and I'd be really comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think only one person can be biologically pregnant. I
have no such compulsion to avoid offense in this case. Whenever I hear anyone say, "We're pregnant," I'm thinking, do you know how stupid you sound right now? I know, like, this is supposed to be a moment where I'm really happy for you, but really internally, I can't help but the reflexive thought of, like, you sound like idiots at this moment, right? Saying we're pregnant. Like, no, you're not pregnant. She's pregnant. You got her pregnant. That's how this works. We are having a baby is the appropriate way to phrase that. You two are having a baby. But the we're pregnant thing, it seems like bizarre over solidarity. Aside from just being idiot, like, it's almost just creepy. Like, there's something about it which is like, I don't know. It's like, it's too much, man.
This is a nice segue to a Brady's paper cut, because I haven't done a Brady's paper cut for a while.
It's been forever.
It has been forever. A while. But my paper cut that I wanted to bring up today is also to do with a turn of phrase that irks me. And I want to see where you stand on it. Mm-hmm. If something happens and you're not particularly bothered by it, your shrugs about it, which is often your response to it, a saying you may use is, "I blank care less." What would the blank be for you there?
Couldn't care less. I couldn't care less.
Thank you.
I know.
Lots of people say, "I could care less."
I think this is an Americanism.
Oh man, that annoys me, because it completely changes the meaning of what you're saying. It's the opposite. Yeah. And it takes away the impact. Saying "I could not care less" is like funny. Saying "I could care less" means there is scope for me to care less, so I do care to some extent. And it's taken away all the meaning you were trying to give of being completely indifferent.
I agree. I think "couldn't care less" is the only appropriate way to phrase this.
Thank you.
There's no other way to phrase this. And yes, it is almost unintentionally hilarious that the person gives the exact reverse of what they're usually trying to say.
And people do it all the time. "Oh, I could care less." "Oh, really? So you do care, do you? Oh, that's good." No, I don't care." "Well, you just said you could care less, so that means..."
I think this is one of those cases where in language, you often have cases where people don't even hear or think about the words they're saying. There is just a phrase that exists that expresses a thing, and the person is not thinking about the actual words. I just came across something like this the other day where I used some phrase and then I had to stop and I thought, like, what does that even mean? Like these words that I've just said, I know the feeling that I'm trying to express, but it's never occurred to me to examine these actual words before.
A really good example of that, I always think, it's not a phrase, but a word, is breakfast. Like, the word breakfast has transcended breaking the fast now. Mm-hmm. And no one thinks of breaking fast when they say breakfast. Breakfast is just its own thing now that transcends its origins.
That's a good way to put it. And I think maybe Brady, if you're feeling in an accepting mood, you should accept I could care less as breakfast. That the person is, you know what they're trying to express, and they're just using a sequence of sounds to express that idea.
No.
No,
Don't accept that.
you're not gonna
No.
you're not gonna go with that. You're not gonna accept that.
Because if people started misspelling breakfast, I wouldn't just accept that or change the word.
I like that. I would not accept that, sir.
Because the thing is as well, saying when you say I couldn't care less, you are being a smartass. Like, you are being sassy when you say I couldn't care less. As you know, on the internet, when you are a smartass or when you're being clever, there is huge extra responsibility on you to get things right.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Like, I'm sure if you've ever written a snarky comment on Reddit or Twitter or YouTube, you check it and triple check it. That you haven't made a spelling mistake. You haven't, because nothing looks more stupid than being snarky, Mr. Smartass, and then being wrong yourself. So I think when someone says, "Well, I could care less," and they think they're being all that, I feel like saying, "Well, you knob, you just said it wrong."
I think you're right. There's something like intrinsically slacker teenagery about the phrase "I couldn't care less." That's the feeling that comes along with that. But when you're totally right, when you're being snarky, you have to be on the ball. Right? It's like everybody's had the experience of giving into their inner grammar Nazi and correcting someone about a picky point, and then discovering later to their horror that they made an error in their very correction. It's like, oh no!
Yeah.
Right? Now I look like a total moron.
Yeah, the number of times I've corrected someone on a fact, like, "Oh, didn't you know everyone knows that?" after spending 8 hours researching it on Wikipedia.
The internet.
Thank you to Squarespace for their support of this podcast. If you've never used Squarespace, I recommend you listen for the next few seconds because it's really worth hearing about them. I have to admit, I used to find it a little bit hard explaining what Squarespace is. I looked it up on Wikipedia to see how it was described there, and there it was called a SaaS-based CMS, which kind of makes sense if you know what those things are, but still sounds kind of technical. I'd describe it as a website that lets you make your own website. Now, I run 2 sites via Squarespace, my own blog and the podcast postcard site. And basically, I just log in and it gives me access to the back end of both those websites. It's a really simple, clean, really cool interface. And from there, I can add pages, I can update pages, I can embed my YouTube videos, insert pictures, write blog posts. I can do anything on both the websites. And within a few keystrokes sometimes, the site's updated. They look great and they work on everyone's devices, on computers, on mobile phones. That's all taken care of behind the scenes. Squarespace has got great templates to get you started. That way you can rest assured your work's going to look professional. But you can also get into those templates and customize them. Really tweak them to your heart's content. Make the site look your own. So if you want to be more a part of the internet, maybe you want a blog, a portfolio, maybe you want to start a shop, Squarespace is great for that too. Really, just give them a look. Give it a try. You can actually set up a practice site without making any commitment just to see how well it works for you. That's what I did at the start. If you like what you see, you can then get 10% off your first purchase by using the offer code HELLO. That's squarespace.com, offer code HELLO, so they know you came from the podcast. Squarespace, all one word with the .com. As I said, I use it. I know Gray uses it. We're really pleased to have them as a sponsor of the show. Our thanks to Squarespace. Just a quick mention by popular demand, and how appropriate actually. Just as I started that sentence, I'm looking out my window at a huge container ship going along the Bristol Channel, and it's a red container ship, which is the same colour as this polar research vessel that is to be constructed by the British government, I believe, to go and do science in the Antarctica. And they decided they would allow it to be named by the public, by sort of public suggestions and public votes. Mm-hmm. What could possibly go wrong?
Everything could go wrong. Don't people know? You don't just open up an election to the internet. That's a terrible idea.
Exactly. They made 2 mistakes that you and I did not make when we had our flag vote.
Yeah, that's because we're professionals.
So what they did not do is create their own shortlist, which we did. And another thing they did not do is put physical and financial constraints between people and their ability to vote, which we did via the postcards. And because they made that mistake, the internet had fun with them. And by far and away, the most popular name that was suggested jokingly and then received well over 100,000 votes to win the poll was Boaty McBoatface, which does not seem a very grand name for a polar exploration ship. I think they were imagining it would be won by something like, the Scott or the Her Royal Highness or Anthem of the Seas or something suitably grand. But no, Boaty McBoatface. So obviously I think the government minister has had to intervene and say, we're not going to call it Boaty McBoatface. I think that's been taken off the table. And I don't know what you think about that, Gray.
Okay, well, I mean, as often happens with Hello Internet preparations, you bring up a thing and you say like, oh, should we talk about this thing? And then I say, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard about this thing. So this Boaty McBoatface thing is new to me as of literally an hour ago. I had never heard about this. But you sent me an article which says that what you described, that this internet election occurred, Boaty McBoatface was selected, but then that the UK government is saying, no, we're not going to name it Boaty McBoatface. And obviously I haven't been following this story, but it feels like, okay, one, UK government, you ran your election horribly for the reasons mentioned before. Two, you were the luckiest bastards on the face of the earth to get the name Boaty McBoatface. Like, do you know how horribly this could have gone? Like, Boaty McBoatface, you should be kissing the ground that the internet selected that name. Like, that's because it's like, it's a fun name, right? Everybody can get behind it. It's like, oh, look, now you have this adorable Arctic research mascot, like Boaty McBoatface. This is like, the internet is, sometimes it can be horrible, but this is a moment where the internet is blessing you with a bit of hilarity. And then you make the final horrible step of coming in like some grumpy parent and saying, no, we can't call it Boaty McBoatface. We're going to give it some serious name. Every step of the way you have done this wrong. Like, roll with it if it's Boaty McBoatface.
I agree.
Commission an artist to paint gigantic cartoon letters of Boaty McBoatface across the side of this thing, right?
And
like
big
just
eyes on the front of the boat.
Yeah,
big eyes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Make the stovepipe like a little hat, do whatever you gotta do.
Oh, it would like this has got worldwide attention for something that no one would have ever heard of. People will flock to see it whenever it comes into port, like in Southampton or wherever it is, to restock before its next mission. People will come to see it. They'll have their photo taken with it, and that's a magnificent opportunity to then say, "Look, I know it's got a funny name. Let us tell you a bit about the science we're doing." And you're right. This was a gift horse. This could have backfired terribly, and instead it became this. I'm actually surprised it didn't get through the grey bubble, because it even became a bit of a meme for a few days, and people were adopting the term, and people would say, "Oh, look, it's Greyface," and let's go. People were changing it to whatever they wanted. Let's name.
This is the meme mutation that always takes place, right?
Yeah, this was fantastic, and then to appear like you said, like a grumpy parent, like to be so draconian about it. I think they've missed a trick, and I kind of get it. If I was spending hundreds of millions of pounds on a ship that I was really proud of, and I thought it was going to have a magnificent name, and it had a silly name, I might think, oh.
Yeah, but if you did, that's because you're a grump with no sense of humor or delight or anything, right? That's why. Because you're a government commission or something dumb, and you don't understand how the world works and what's delights and sparks people's interest, right? Like, that's probably why you're in the position that you're in right now. That's probably why you ran this internet election the way that you did. In like the most cursory of research would have revealed that this would be a terrible way to run an internet election. Like, this is not the first time someone has opened up something to the public for the internet to vote on. And it's like, guess what? They don't do the thing that you want them to do. Like, almost by definition, you are going to get opposite results from what you want. The first one of these I can ever remember is, this is ages ago, but the first one was I think it was T-Shirt Hell, but this guy who ran this T-shirt selling company, he ran a poll on the internet to change his name. Like, he didn't like his name, and he thought, oh, I'll let the internet select my name. And now he's named Sunshine Megatron. I'm like, this is what happens, you know?
Yeah.
Like, but there's like a now decade plus history of this kind of nonsense happening.
Yeah. I don't know. I also wonder how many times they're going to have to paint over someone breaking into the docks in the middle of the night and putting Boaty McBoatface on the side of the thing anyway now.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. Mr. Splashy Pants was another one of these things where Greenpeace had some internet name to pick like a humpback whale they wanted to name, and of course it comes up as Mr. Splashy Pants. And it was a similar thing about like there was some pushback about it. Like, this is a long time ago. This is one of like the earlier Reddit history kind of things. Yeah. It's like, this is always what's going to happen. Like, you want the internet to name your thing. Like, be careful what you wish for. But if they're going to name it, like, for the love of God, don't go against what you've just, like, you're guaranteed just to make everybody angry. And I agree with you. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if they end up having to deal with vandalism, like people spray painting, Boaty McBoatface lives across the side of the boat. It's interesting seeing like big organizations interact with the internet, and it always just feels like, do you guys know what you're doing? Like, is there anyone on your staff who's ever been on the internet? Like, can't you think this through?
To take the other side for a minute, because it's only fair, and I do see the other side.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a funny joke for a week or two, but like, you hadn't heard of it, and the joke will go away and we'll all forget about it in a few weeks. This boat, sorry, it's not actually a boat, which is another issue. This ship won't be built for another couple of years, and then it will probably be in service for 20 or 30 years. Is it right to have this flash in the pan joke on the side of the ship for all that time when you could do something a bit more dignified? Call it the David Attenborough or something.
Okay, let me ask you something.
Mm-hmm.
How many boats in the world can you name?
Well,
yeah,
I only a handful. Yeah,
right.
But they all have very majestic names, like the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth and things like that. They don't have names like Silly McSilliness.
Right. But the thing is, the majestic names don't guarantee notability, because every boat has some majestic name. Right? This is one way that this boat will at least be remembered and known about for a long period of time. This makes it stand out. Like, it's a funny thing. It's a bit of fun history that goes along with it. It makes it unique among the boats. I don't agree with the 30 years from now we're going to have to be telling a story about how we ran an internet poll and they named it Boaty McBoatface. Like, that's part of the fun of it. I think that's what makes it unique.
I don't know, Gray. I don't know. Let me argue the point then. I think it's incumbent on leaders and people in position of authority to think beyond a meme joke for a couple of weeks. It's easy for you and I to sit here. Don't get me wrong, I know I've been saying they should call it Boaty McBoatface, but it's easy for you and I to sit here and think it amuses us and it has amused the internet. Let's do it. Whereas there are other people who have to think about other considerations. I mean, in 10 years, the people who run this ship are going to be applying to a different government in a different time, in a different era, to a different funding body, saying, can we have $20 million for our penguin research aboard the Boaty McBoatface? And I think that's going to hurt them. That's going to hurt them because of a jokey decision that's made now. Whereas if they said, can we have...
Will it hurt them, though? I don't think that's a guaranteed thing.
I don't know. I think it could. I think people who bequeath large sums of money and who allocate funds are drawn to integrity and seriousness more than they are to jokiness and flippant things. And I think labelling it Boaty McBoatface for all time will always be a bit of a wink wink, are they serious?
But don't you want to stand out in the application pile? I think that's a legitimate argument.
Well, yeah, you could stand out in the application pile by dressing up as a clown as well. Standing out doesn't always mean success.
Nope, sure doesn't.
I do see the other argument. I do think go with it. My overall, all things considered, I do say roll with it. Not such a bad name that it's going to hurt you forever. It's not like, they said, let's call it the Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I do
even the Adolf Hitler, I would feel like you got off lucky, right?
yeah. Well, I could have said something else, but that would probably contravene some of my swearing policies.
Yeah, it could be called like the face yourself boat, right? Like that's what it could be called.
I think you just used your full quota of beeps for the episode there.
Yeah, but like that could easily happen, right? Easily.
I do have some sympathy for putting your foot down and saying, no, we're going to have a more dignified name. One of the best suggestions I read was someone saying, because it's not actually a boat anyway, but it does have like a little small boat on it, presumably to go and do little coastal runs to go and see the penguins.
Oh, like the captain's yacht in Star Trek.
Basically, yeah. Call the little mini boat Boaty McBoatface and give the big ship, not Shippy McShipface, but give the big ship its dignified name, but at least do a nod to Boaty McBoatface by calling the small one that, which I thought was not a bad compromise.
No.
Not buying it.
No, don't compromise. No compromise. Don't accept that, internet.
I'm actually talking myself out of calling it Boaty McBoatface now, but
I can hear it in your voice as you go on. This is what happens. Like you initially take the other side as a devil's advocate, and then you suddenly find yourself on the other side. But this is what makes you good at your job.
I'm very persuasive, Gray. I can even persuade myself. After much toing and froing and spiking and unspiking, you did do your encryption, Apple hacking, iPhone-y videos.
I did. Yeah. I did. There was a bit of anguish about this. Yeah. There was a bit of anguish about this. Mm-hmm. I even asked you if you thought I should go ahead with making the video or not.
No. You even gave me a sneaky look at a script.
Yeah. I wanted your input on it. You told me to go ahead. A bunch of people told me to go ahead. So yes, I did make it. Despite several weeks ago, the case that brought this up originally was this whole like Apple versus the FBI thing, where the FBI wanted Apple to open up their phone and make a bunch of data available. And it's a whole big complicated thing with tons of details that don't really matter. But I was working on a script about that, and then that whole thing just ended, and I thought like, oh, well, this is over. And I thought the script was kind of useless after that point. But the story is not over, and I did end up continuing to work on it, thanks partly to the encouragement of you and some other people. And so, I put 2 videos up, which are sort of about the Apple FBI thing without ever mentioning the Apple or the FBI thing, because I think there's a much bigger question here, which is about encryption just in general.
I have 2 questions, Gray. Mm. Both of them will betray perhaps ignorance in the subject, but that's okay. I revel in my ignorance. The first one is about this warrants and searching. Mm-hmm. Because obviously there is this different situation. Like a judge can issue a warrant, and then the police can break your door down and search your house if you don't let them in. What's the situation with phones in terms of if you were still alive and the judge said the police have the right to look into CGP Gray's phone, Gray, please enter the code so the police can look. Presumably you can be compelled to do that, and if you don't, they'll put you in prison for contempt of court. Like, I'm assuming they can still do that, because also they do that with, when people were texting while they were driving and things like that. Or what's the law there? I'm not talking about Apple breaking into the phone, which I think is very different. Yeah, that's a different question. But what's the situation with compelling you as the phone owner to? Presumably that's like any other warrant, and a judge can do that.
The answer is it depends on where you live. Yeah. And so if we take where we are right now in the United Kingdom has written into the law that they can compel you to reveal the passwords to your devices. Right. So if you were involved in a trial in the UK, they can say, open up your phone. And if you say no, there are criminal penalties for saying no. It's time in prison.
You're in contempt of the court. Yep.
Right. Like, enjoy your time in solitary until you open this phone. Right? Yeah. Like that's what's going to happen. You can choose not to, but they're going to compel you.
Yeah.
Now, what I think is a very interesting, unique, and I think important part of the U.S. legal system is this protection against self-incrimination. Now, some other places have this, but the United States has a particularly strong version of this, where essentially, like, the court cannot compel you to speak or to act. And so in the United States, if you have a phone and they say, open up this phone, you are legally allowed to just sit there and do nothing. You don't have to comply, and they cannot punish you for non-compliance.
Right.
And so this places the burden on the state to prove things. Like you cannot incriminate yourself. And I think that's where a lot of the really interesting parts around this issue turn. My understanding, I might not be 100% accurate about this. My understanding, though, is that there is a little wrinkle with the fingerprint sensor that police in the United States can compel you to like touch the fingerprint sensor. There's something about this where like the police are allowed to put the phone against your finger, and that doesn't actually count as compelling you to do anything.
Right.
And so like the fingerprint sensor is a bit of a weird loophole in this. So there are ways that they can try to legally get into your phone, but they can't make you reveal the password. Which there's some interesting consequences to both sides of these. For example, I think the right to be able to remain silent, I really think that should be part of every legal system. Because one of the things that I don't like about the UK system, where they can compel you to speak, is that you can end up in situations where you are trapped. So, I mean, let's say that the police raid your home, and within your computer file somewhere is an encrypted file that you don't know anything about, that you downloaded from somewhere, like some malware put on your computer or whatever. You can be in a situation where they want to compel you to open that file, and it's like, I don't know the password. And they're like, well, we're going to make you think about that. Like, go ahead and sit in prison until you're able to open up this file. Like, I don't like even the legal possibility of a situation like that occurring. I don't think that's a good thing to have in a legal system, that a person is required to perform an action in order to not be imprisoned. I am very strongly on the opposite side. Like, the burden should be on the state to do everything to prove your guilt, not the other way around. Like, I don't like making things super easy for the government to put people in prison. I think it definitionally should be a difficult thing.
I'm sure I've seen lots of American TV shows where people are put in prison for being in contempt of court until they cough up the name or they cough up a source or something. So surely there are some situations in America where they compel people to do things. Like, I know you shouldn't base your knowledge of the law on American TV shows, but
I'm going to guess most of those cases have to do with the horrible, horrible plea bargaining system that occurs in the United States. There are many ways in which you can be held in prison, like awaiting a trial. And then there's this whole question about like what counts as a speedy trial in the United States. How long can they keep you just waiting around? Like, I think there's certainly an amount of wiggle room about that. I am just talking about the situation of like when you get to a trial, like a trial is occurring, what can happen in that scenario. But in the US, like, I always keep meaning to do something about this, but it is a horrible situation where like very, very few cases ever make it to trial. They are all handled in this very, very high stakes, confrontational, high pressure plea bargain kind of way, where a lot of the normal protections just don't work because you're like bargaining with lawyers. So I imagine like that's what you're thinking about. That's what's occurring there.
Another thing about your video on encryption that struck me was a kind of not that it was your job to question it, but you kind of had an unquestioning faith in the integrity of encryption. I don't know whether that's founded or not. I know, like, how safe is, mathematical encryption? I mean, I've done videos about it, and I'm aware of some of the things involved and these huge prime numbers and how it works and things. But we don't know where quantum computing is really at.
Yeah.
And things like that. So, I mean, you're assuming a lot about the integrity of encryption when you're making your arguments. Do you question that in your head?
There is a brief moment in the video in one of the slides where I make a reference to, on the screen, there's a visual reference to quantum computing just messing all of this up, because like I did want to kind of get it on record. Like, I acknowledge there are future technological problems that may undo all of our current state of encryption. They may actually end up introducing with quantum computing greater levels of encryption, but we can certainly say like stuff encrypted today could be quite trivial for a quantum computer years from now to unencrypt. Like, that we may very well be in that case. But there's two things that are going on here. Like, one is just this idea of, as a person, can you encrypt data on your computer in such a way so that no one can practically access it? And the answer to that is yes. Like as far as we know, unless the NSA has some secret quantum computer somewhere they're not telling us about, like an individual on their own computer can encrypt files in a way that it makes them essentially unavailable for the rest of time, presuming no massive technological changes. And I think that that's a really interesting fact. And I was trying forever to come up with an analogy to explain, like, how is this the case? Because when people think about like locking something away, fundamentally what you're doing is you are putting a thing in a container and you're trying to make the container really secure, right? But the thing is still inside the container. But the way encryption works is it's like, well, if you encrypt a drive on your computer, it's almost like the data isn't there on the drive anymore until you enter the password to like move all of the bits back around into a readable fashion. So it's not like someone can crack into it, like you can break into a safe and retrieve the thing. Like encryption, because of the magic of mathematics, like it makes the stuff not there until the password is provided. Like there's nothing to break.
You're splitting hairs now, though. I mean, that's like if I had a completely unbreakable safe with $1 million in it, I could say, well, the $1 million isn't really there because it's in an unbreakable safe.
But there's no physical safe that you could build that's unbreakable.
Well, you could argue there's no form of encryption of the data that's unbreakable too. I don't know. But see, this is your assumption. Your assumption is that encryption is unbreakable.
I am saying that, like, my understanding of this is that if you encrypt a drive with a secure enough password, the only way to get to that password is to brute force it. And like all of the computing technology in the world will not let you do that.
Basically, you're saying to me, you do have faith in modern encryption, barring people having password 123 or
right, yeah.
Being stupid. You do have faith in encryption. And fair enough, maybe you're right. Maybe I don't know enough about encryption. I guess a bit of an elephant in the room, and I don't know if more has come out about this or you have your own theory, but the FBI did suddenly say in this San Bernardino case, they suddenly said, "Oh, we've got into the phone now." How do they get into it?
So this is the other issue that I'm not touching on in the video, because again, I'm trying to keep it like, oh, we're in the platonic ideal of encrypting a phone, right? Like that is the realm in which my video exists, right? But there is a totally separate, unrelated issue, which is how secure can a particular company make a particular model of phone? And that is the question which I'm not talking about, because the answer is, like, there have been tons of security exploits with Apple stuff and Android phones over the years and various models of phones. Like, they are no stranger to various ways of people breaking into their particular phones, right? Like that definitely exists. And Apple over time has, I will just speak about Apple because that's the one I'm more familiar with, but Apple over time has tried to increase the security of their phones. And if you want to read a document, which I think exists at the intersection of fascinating and deadly boring, Apple makes a lot of their security documents available online. And I was reading through a bunch of these where they talk about how their security systems work. And like, they have such a difficult problem, because the example I was using before, where you are an individual on your own computer attempting to encrypt your own files, like, that's very straightforward. You can do that with available software. But Apple is in this difficult position of, like, they want to sell you a device that they want to be able to remotely update, to make changes to, right? And in which you are also going to put on your data. And like, that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. Like, they want your data to be secure on the phone, while also they have the ability to remotely change the software on the phone. Like, it never really occurred to me before reading through some of the security documents, but that is a hell of a hard problem to solve. And it's fascinating, like, all of the ways that they have tried to go about this. Like, they, each phone has like this randomly burned in series of on and off transistors that are used as like this local thing to encrypt the files. And then they combine that with like data from your fingerprint. Like, they are doing so much crazy stuff to try to prevent Apple, to prevent anybody else from being able to access the data on the phone except you. And it's so hard, especially when you consider like most people are using a 4-digit PIN on their phone. So it's a fascinating problem that they have. But because their situation is not straightforward, because they are putting out into the world these phones that they also want some level of access to, this is one of the reasons why there are particular security flaws in the phones that do allow people to get access. Like Apple tries to fix them as much as they can. They're always trying to make the phones more secure with each generation. But they're just doing a thing that's going to be fundamentally flawed in some scenarios. And so, again, I don't really want to get into some of like the details of this particular case, but I'll just say that like it came up because that particular phone, the iPhone 5C, had some particular security flaws that the FBI wanted Apple to exploit, right? And that had it been a newer phone, like, oh, we solved those security problems, that can no longer be fixed. This to me is two different questions. Like, is encryption a thing that exists that can be theoretically unbreakable? Yes. Can Apple make a phone that is perfectly always unbreakable in all scenarios? The answer to that question so far is like no, but they're always getting better at that. Like they're trying to move more and more toward that direction. Like they are clearly trying to close off more and more of people's data from themselves, from anybody being able to access it. But I really think those are two very different questions. This episode of Hello Internet is brought to you by Backblaze, which again, quite frankly, I'm always a little bit surprised that Backblaze keeps buying these ads, because it means that you listeners, there are still so many of you who keep signing up with Backblaze because you are living with unprotected data, just sitting on your hard drives, waiting to disappear at any moment. I don't know how many times I have to keep telling you, if you don't have online backup, you are crazy. You are just living a wild, reckless life, inviting digital disaster in. If this is you, go to backblaze.com/hellointernet right now and sign up for unlimited, unthrottled backup for just $5 a month. These guys are the total experts. They have over 150 petabytes of data backed up. They've restored 10 billion files for their customers. If you're away from your computer and you need to just get access to one file, this is something that you can totally do. I have done this so many times for video projects that I have archived on this huge hard drive that's sitting next to me here now. That stuff's not in my regular syncing system, but I can get access to it through Backblaze if I'm somewhere else and I need to get an asset file from a video. It's fantastic. Now, since we've been talking about encryption, one of the little features that Backblaze has is if you are extremely concerned about your digital security in the way that I am, Backblaze has the option where if you know what you're doing, you can enter a private encryption key. This means that all of the data that's uploaded to Backblaze, even if, say, I don't know, some government issued a warrant saying that they wanted access to all of your digital backups, there's nothing Backblaze can give them. They can hand over the encrypted files, but tough luck. Now, this is for experts only. If you are going to enable this feature, you really better know what you're doing, because if you lose your private encryption key and your house burns down, and as I have learned, disasters always come in more than one, you are going to be totally out of luck. You will not be able to restore your files. There is nothing Backblaze is going to be able to help you with. That is the flip side of security. But I really like that Backblaze even has this as an option for the super duper privacy concerned. Once again, it just shows these guys are the pros. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. If you are still listening to me and you don't have online backup on your computer, you need to go to backblaze.com/hellointernet right now and sign up for their $5 a month per computer for unlimited, unthrottled backup. Their trial is risk-free, no credit card required. You have nothing to lose except all of your data if you don't sign up. Thanks to Backblaze for supporting the show.
You said one other thing in your second video, which, unless I misunderstood it, I disagree with. In your second video about how important our phones are to us, you made the point that given the choice between allowing someone to read your mind or read through all the contents of your phone, you think reading the mind is the better option.
I think under certain circumstances, yes. Yeah, I do think that.
I think that's only true under very, very limited circumstances. And I can't agree with you. I think that was a slightly inflammatory and ridiculous thing to say.
Why do you think it's ridiculous?
Because someone being able to read all the contents of your mind is far more revealing and potentially damaging, and I'm assuming damage limitation was the premise of the question, and far more damaging than someone reading the contents of your phone. And I think you agree because you have that sound about you.
I'm trying to think about how to bring a Brady over to my side here.
All right.
But I think there's a fundamental problem, which is that I am a very present and future-oriented person, and I think you are much more of a past-oriented person. And I have a hell of a hard time remembering lots of things in my own life. Like, there's just so much stuff that I just forget all the time. Like, my wife constantly comments on this about how things that happened a year ago, from my perspective, it's like they never happened ever. Like, what? When did this occur? I have no idea. And so I feel like my mind might be particularly, perhaps unusually, devoid of records. Right? That there's just not a whole lot stored in there, that it's much more like, oh, what's going on right now? Now, of course, like, people have thoughts, like there are things that you don't want other people to like hear, that of course the sub-vocalizing voice in your head is talking all the time. But I can honestly say that would I rather have someone read my mind or read my phone? I think I would rather have someone read my mind. Your phone has just so many records of absolutely everything in your life that you don't even know what's in your phone. Like what embarrassing stuff is in there.
That's crazy, Gray. That's crazy. Let's use the extreme criminal example first, right? Mm-hmm. Say you were accused of some terrible heist in, it's a diamond heist in the centre of London, and the police have got you in a cell, and they say, Gray, can we read your mind or can we read your phone? Well,
have I committed the heist?
Yes, you've committed the heist.
Okay, I've committed the heist.
You've committed the heist.
Just want to be like, what's the situation here?
All right. You've committed that. Now, you're not going to forget that you committed the heist. You might forget where you were on April 2, 2014 when you met with me to plan it. Mm-hmm. But you're not going to forget you did it. So when they use their incredible mind-reading probe that they've borrowed from Darth Vader, they're going to know straight away. They're going to say, the first thing they'll ask you is, did you do the heist? Your brain will say, yes. And then you're off to jail.
It was awesome.
Yeah. Whereas it's very unlikely you have written in your phone, I did the heist. There'll be lots and lots of evidence. I was at this place at this time. I was at this place at this time. Here are the blueprints of the building. Here are all this. Here's discussion about here's me looking at websites about selling diamonds. There's going to be a ton of circumstantial evidence that they can use to build up the case against you. Mm-hmm. But nothing more powerful than your brain just saying, yes, I did it. Mm-hmm. With this perfect brain reading machine. So straight away, they've got you by reading your mind, regardless of all this evidence. Mm-hmm. And also, so I think the criminal example just falls to pieces because no one forgets they're a criminal.
And just to be clear, I agree with you there. Yeah. Right? Like I am not going to take the opposite position that like if I am actually a diamond heister, then yes, I would rather have someone look at the phone than have my own brain and play back the memory of like, here's me doing this diamond heist.
Now, let's say you're talking about like just your friend. Like, are you going to let me read your mind, Gray, or are you going to let me look at your phone? And if I look at your phone, I'll see all the texts and emails you sent to your friends and family saying, oh, Brady's really pissing me off today, and all those embarrassing things, right, that you don't want me to see. And right. You've forgotten you even sent them.
Right, of course.
Like you've forgotten someday you were pissed off at me 2 years ago, and it'll be really embarrassing if I then read it because you don't even feel that way anymore. Mm-hmm. But I still think it's much more damaging if I'm able to go into your brain and find out your true, real feelings, like, oh, I don't like the way he looks, or I don't like the way he smells, or, because that's that's also more truth. If I look at your phone, I'll have my feelings hurt, but at least I can tell myself, oh, well, okay, that was 2 years ago, and I was being a bit of a dick that day, so fair enough. But if I can go straight into your brain and know your innermost feelings and your deepest thoughts, that's much more potentially hurtful or private. And sure, you can't remember little details, but that's the core of who you are in your brain. And you can tell me it changes over time, and that, but I think that's much more damaging. I can't see a circumstance where I think being able to read my mind would be less damaging than being able to read my phone. I certainly don't want people to read my phone. Mm-hmm. And you're right, I've forgotten more than half the stuff in it, and it would be really embarrassing. But being able to get into my brain, where all my deepest, darkest thoughts are, things I would never even write into a phone, I don't want people going in there.
See, I don't know. I genuinely feel if we were sitting at the pub and I could hand you my phone or hand you my brain, I'd rather hand you my brain.
It's really interesting.
I feel like, yeah, go ahead, look through. Like, obviously, there'd be embarrassing stuff in my brain, but I feel like the phone, again, assuming that you were able to, like, understand everything on the phone in the same way that you were able to understand everything on the brain, I feel like there's potentially way worse stuff on the phone that I don't even remember or think about. Or, like you said, stuff that is not even relevant now but could somehow be damaging. Like, it just feels like there's so much more potential there than, like, what's in my brain now. Like,
no, I don't
not a
agree.
whole lot.
I don't agree, because with this hypothetical brain reading that we're talking about, presumably I can interrogate you for what I want, like your opinions and feelings.
I am presuming that you would have access to the state of my brain in the same way that I have access to the state of my brain.
Surely that's more damaging, because I could find out really personal things about you that you would never have committed to your phone before.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, did years ago me commit really personal stuff to my phone? I don't know. Possibly, probably. I don't know.
I'm not saying there's none of that there. Of course, there's going to be tons and tons of it. But not more than the ability for me just to read your mind and find out what you think about everything.
I guess what I feel here is, like, I am more confident in the limited content of my brain than I am in the what seems like near infinite content of my phone. It's almost like a devil you know versus devil you don't know situation here, and I feel like the phone is the devil I don't know. Like, dear God, what did I type into that thing 3 years ago? I have no idea. Like, man, let's not let anybody look at that. I don't even want to look at that.
I don't know if I should read into this that you're actually just a really, really lovely person in your brain, or that you're really, really worried about what you were like a few years ago.
I don't know. Let me ask you something else about that, though.
All right.
Because all of this, the encryption stuff, or like reading your mind or reading your phone, I feel like this is all a sideshow in the same way that, like, the Star Trek video was all like a sideshow to what I thought was the actual point. What do you think about taking the phone or other digital devices in your life and considering them in a legal sense as an extension of the self? And here I want to say, like, let's talk about this in the context of American law, where, like, you are not obligated to incriminate yourself. And so in some sense, like, that is legal protection for the state of your brain. What do you think about establishing some kind of legal precedent to say, like, we are going to decide that a person's phone is like an off-board brain, and this is legally protected as part of the self in the same way that we protect people's brains as part of the self?
Oh, interesting. I think my first instinct is no, because everything going into your phone is still a document, like paperwork, like every photo. And just because we're becoming a lot more prolific with our creation of the paperwork doesn't mean that it's not paperwork. So my first instinct is no, these are all still documents that can be treated as separate from who we are. Whether or not that means everyone should, whether or not it means it's open season on people seeing them is another question. But it's also questionable about the paper I have in my cupboard. Not everyone can look at that either.
Right, but we're talking about it like in a legal context here, right? That we can just say, like, you are falsely accused of a crime, but nonetheless, like, there is and you somehow live in America, but nonetheless there is a warrant to seize all of your documents, right? And then the question, I think, is, like, does that include all of the documents on your phone, or is it just limited to the documents in your house? Like how far can that go?
I guess the phone could start becoming quite a handy refuge of the criminal, couldn't it? Because phones are so powerful now and can hold so much that you just do everything with your phone and put everything in your phone, comfortable in the knowledge that it could never be scrutinized no matter what you do. So...
But you can do that with your own brain now, right? Like, I'm sure criminals in the past, they have the option of not committing things to paper.
Yeah.
I don't think criminals could use a thing. It, to me, is always one of like the worst arguments ever, right? Like we have tools and criminals can use tools, right? But tools are still good. We don't ban tools of any kind.
It's true.
I'm only asking because I think this is the part of the video.
But we also don't ban the police from then fingerprinting those tools or checking the bloodstains on them after a crime is committed.
Right. And I think that's where this balance comes in, right? Of how much power do we grant to authorities? Where do we set the boundaries of personal liberty? Like, where is that edge? The reason I think this is so important is to go back to the mind reading ever so slightly. I don't think that we live in a world where it is unreasonable to expect that at some point we really will be able to build essentially mind reading machines, right? Or close enough. And then I think like, boy, the American legal system has a really interesting question there of if we legally protect your right to not say anything, but do we legally protect your right to not be in a brain scanner? That's an interesting question. And my gut reaction is that protection against self-incrimination should extend to the mind just in general, so that in a future scenario where we do have a brain reading machine, you should not be able to compel someone to go in a brain reading machine. I think that counts as self-incrimination.
Yeah.
Then it was the most hesitant yes in the world. Do you think so or do you not think so?
Are we assuming a completely flawless brain reading machine?
Let's assume that it actually works, right? It works as well as someone reading a piece of paper works.
I guess it comes down to whether or not you think this legal system's main goal is to establish truth and then execute justice, or to protect people from getting themselves in trouble. And if you've got an absolutely perfect 100% platonic brain reading machine, well, that's the end of courts, isn't it? Like, did you kill her? Well, let's find out. Perfect brain machine. Yes, I did kill her. Here's the circumstances. What are you going to do about it? What's justice? And the only reason to sort of protect the rights of the people from self-incriminating is flaws in the legal system. But you've given me a flawless machine to find out what happened.
I don't actually agree that a perfect mind-reading machine would be the end of the legal system.
Oh, are you also talking about false memories or poor memories?
Because people can be wrong about the state of their own mind.
Well, yeah, okay. I was sort of... My platonic machine had gotten around that problem.
right.
But
but now you're just talking about a magic machine, right? Because people are often wrong about the state of their own mind, right? Which starts to get you into such strange things, and and it's one of these cases where when high profile crimes occur, it is not unusual for police to get tons of just confessions from people. It's just like, oh, I did this crime. Like, oh, no, you didn't. You're just crazy, right? You're a lunatic. You think you did this, but you didn't do this. So the machine isn't magic, but it is a perfect brain reading machine. And that's a different thing.
I mean, would a perfect legal justice system create a situation where people didn't remain silent? Everyone just calmly, without pressure, told what they think their version of the story is, and then people came to decisions. I mean, this current situation where people can just keep stump and not incriminate themselves is there to protect them from all of the pressures that are there and all the flaws in the legal system. So would a more idealized legal system not have people remaining silent? They would tell their version of events, and then this amazing judge would hear everyone's version of events, told calmly and rationally and fairly, and weigh them and look at the evidence. Like, it feels like the people's right to remain silent, which I am in favour of, is there because we have a flawed system. And now you're sort of playing fantasy legal systems and removing all the flaws. And I think if we have all these flaws being removed, this right to remain silent, I don't see the need for it anymore.
Yeah, see, I don't think I'm playing fantasy legal system, though. My concern is that you'd have a legal system which is still like today. It's made of people, and you have trials, and you have lawyers, and you have like all of these conflicting interests. But you just happen to have a piece of technology that allows you to read the thoughts and contents of a person's mind.
With the flawed system and just one new piece of technology, obviously, I think people should still have the right to remain silent.
Okay. Okay. So
I was taking fantasy legal system to extremes there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. In a perfect world, we have no problems. Yes, I do agree with that point. But I'm just still thinking like an actual progression of today's technology. Like I was reading around, and some people were sending me like there's some super interesting stuff about just how the resolution of brain scanning technology is increasing over time, and that there are some extremely rudimentary examples of trying to pull things like color thoughts out of a person's brain. Like if someone's thinking a color, like you can identify what color they're thinking by a brain scan. Like just some really weird stuff like that. It's like, oh, okay, well, I can see where this is going. Like it's not in principle impossible to do. So it seems like I think it's inevitable we'll end up with something that can at least be some kind of brain scanner at some point. And that's why I genuinely worry about this stuff. But the related thing is this idea about like where does if as you do you agree that presuming we don't have a perfect legal system, there is still room and still reason for the protection against self-incrimination, then I also think we are going to very rapidly get into a world where you have to start wondering, what are the boundaries of the self? Right? Where do we draw that line about what counts as self-incrimination? And I thought like it was just by coincidence, but a bunch of people sent me that the day that video went up, there was a news story about someone who had a computer chip implanted in their brain that allowed them, they were an amputee, but that allowed them to control an arm, like just with their thoughts. And people were pointing out like, well, this is actually a super interesting case. Like, could you have a warrant for the information recorded on that computer chip in that person's brain? Obviously, right now, it's not storing or recording a lot of information, but it's an interesting legal question. Could you write a warrant to say, please turn over the information on that computer chip in that person's brain? And my gut feeling is no, like that chip is part of the self of that person. It is not a separate entity. It is not the equivalent of a piece of paper lying on someone's desk. I think that's different. And I also feel like we use our phones and our digital devices so much now as off-board brains that I really do think the amount that we use them inches them into this category of legal protection for the self. And I think it's important to set this precedent like for the future. I really do think like this is going to be a legal question in some court in some country in the nearish future about trying to subpoena information for a piece of technology that is like in a person. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
I mean, I can't speak to the chip in the person. That is the thing is, if I was accused of a crime 15 years ago, police could have gone through a few letters and gone through a few photo albums with solid printed photos stuck in them, and they wouldn't have found out a lot to help them. And now they could go through my phone and find a million photos I've taken every day, and look at a million emails I've sent, and look at all my movements and know a lot more. So obviously what's in my phone is a lot more incriminating than what existed 10 years ago. The question is, at what point between that scratchy old photo album and the letters and my shiny phone with all the information, at what point was the threshold crossed where it became part of me, the phone became part of me? It's impossible to draw that line to say, okay, once it got over 1,000 photos, it's now me. It's no longer a photo album, it's me. Once you've got over 2,000 messages, it's no longer documents. It's now me. It's part of me. I don't know at what point my phone became me.
This is the classic, like, where is the boundary problem that you run into a whole lot of stuff. There is no good way to answer that question. And I think you can make that question way more difficult by imagining a theoretical person who makes a physical copy of every single file that is on their phone, right? That they are just a tremendous paper hoarder living in a gigantic mansion filled with reams and reams of paper of their GPS coordinates for every second and all of the messages and all of the photos and all of the emails and like, and how many pages of paper you would need to print out to be the equivalent of like 4K 60 frames per second video they've taken. But like, you can imagine in theory a person living in this mansion with all of this stuff, all of this crap. And then my feeling is like, oh, but those papers aren't them, right? That's my initial feeling. Even though all of the information would theoretically be the same, that somehow like, oh, but that seems different.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense? No, that doesn't make any sense at all. But my emotional reaction is that it's somehow different when it is all contained on a device that is never far away, that is with you all the time. That is different somehow. But I'm also willing to accept that we may, in a future state, look back on this and say, oh no, the dividing line is when the devices started going in our bodies, right? That, oh, an iPhone, obviously the iPhone isn't really an extension of the self. That was just ridiculous hyperbole. But this, right, this chip in my head, which is connected to the internet with which I can store memories and download new thoughts, like that chip in my head obviously is part of myself in the way that a phone isn't. Like maybe that's a more natural boundary.
That does seem like crossing the threshold into kind of sacred ground, doesn't it? Once it's physically touching you at every second. Maybe that helps. Maybe that will help draw a line.
Yeah. But what if you tape an iPhone to your head? Checkmate.